that yes, there is definitely this security safety element in the sense that the world as conceptualized by quite a few Egyptians is also a world that is safe, that is secure, and that is also balanced. The ideal Egyptian conception of the world is something that is at peace, that is without trouble. And it's something that is stressed pretty much in texts from all genres. And when this balance is broken, then we enter a period of trouble. So this safety element, this element of feeling at peace, of feeling secure is actually something very important. And this, I believe, clearly related to the concept of feeling at home. So the Egyptian feels at home when he actually feels secure. Hence this fear sometimes of what is unknown and what can actually bring trouble. What I meant is, so you have different kind of classification. You have a very encyclopedic one, which is basically listing everything that exists. And this is something that's typical from the early times, so Old Kingdom, for example. But then the system evolves quite a lot over time. And once you reach the New Kingdom, and especially the Egyptian hieratic text, you have a system that is much more rationalized, and that use a system of economy. And then you have a very, very interesting phenomenon, which is the one of multiple classification. So as at least some of you know, I'm sure, is that in the New Kingdom, you have many words that actually take two or even more classifiers. And this combination of classifiers actually give you a broad conceptual category in which your word is supposed to enter, to belong, and then a smaller conceptual category, like a subcategory, which gives you a bit more defined information about the semantics of the word. Now, this can be combined with another phenomenon, which is the one of alternative classification. And this is also fascinating in the sense that for a very same word with very same meaning, so I'm not talking about polysemy or semantic change in this case, but really the same meaning, you can have different possible classification. And this is based on the fact that for one meaning of a word, you can actually choose some semantic features, different semantic features. And this can be done according to the general dynamics of the text, for example. And this can be just on the visual level. For example, if you take the word uha that I was mentioning before about the fact of coming home after work. So this can be classified mostly in two ways. You have the main spelling for this specific meaning, which is the one of one leg, and then the general classifier of movement with the two legs, right? So this is the most common one for that meaning. But then you can also have the one of action and the little hope, which is linked to the one of the meaning of binding in general. And this classification is actually inherited from the first meaning of the word, which means to untie, basically. So basically, going home is being untied after work. So in this case, you have this evolution. So the first group of classifiers, the one with the action and the little hope, actually points towards what was the first meaning of that word. But then you have the other one, which is clearly indicating that there was an evolution in this case, and that in this specific context, this word should be understood as the fact of walking home, basically. So going as a movement toward home. Yeah, and this really, that tells you a lot about the way they were actually seeing the world and the way they were classifying all these actions. And you can see that for natural things. You can see that for animals, for example. You can see that for emotions. Emotions are a very good example of this. So if you're an Egyptian and you want to talk about anger, and you have to choose an animal to represent anger, of course you are not going to choose a polar bear, right? Because they don't have polar bears. But if you are an Inuit, you will choose perhaps a polar bear. That can happen, right? So they will choose something that they see around them. They will choose a crocodile. They will choose a baboon. They will choose a blowfish. Not that the blowfish is particularly dangerous, but when he's attacked, he blows just to make the person in front of him afraid, right? This is actually my favorite, and this is a little ring to Marwan because this was part of our common work. Like, just looking at this, you can understand a lot about the way of thinking and about the way of looking at the world around them. And they observe a lot because this is all very detailed. This is really based on the behavior of these animals or the specific, characteristic of plants, for example, and so on. So yeah, I think the script in this regard actually gives us lots of elements of information about the Egyptian world as it was perceived by the Egyptians.